This is an open letter, so to speak, to leftists who follow me and might be inclined to want to cancel Joey Swoll over his recent remarks. We'll call them Color Gate.
If you're going to attack me, you better go after the colored athletes and the people that are black and minority that went and posted him as well. Okay, the man was nice to me. He made a mistake.
But moderates, libertarians, anarchists, right-wing extremists, monarchists, whoever else, feel free to listen in. I think you're going to find value in it too. There's some Lord of the Rings references coming. They're going to be pretty good, so hopefully that induces you to stay tuned. People from all ends of the political spectrum follow me, and I think that's a really positive thing. I think it's good for fitness to be kind of a neutral territory for people from conflicting ideologies to meet and get outside the echo chambers and run into other types of people. And that's what this is ultimately going to be about. It's nominally about Joey Swoll, but he's kind of just a convenient example. I'm making the case that he should not be canceled and that leftists shouldn't be outraged over his recent remarks, but frankly, I can't stand the guy either. I'm just using the buzz around him in social media to get out a message that I think is really important. This is going to be a lot more than just, celebrity gossip. So leftists, let's cut to the chase. Why I'm talking about this. What I think you should be outraged by right now is that an entire population is being systematically, let's say, gotten rid of. Starvation is being used as a weapon of war in violation of the Geneva Convention. We have indiscriminate use of ordnance to level civilian areas. I'm trying to speak in terms that hopefully you don't get this video taken down. Now, obviously, every person who's not a complete sociopath should be outraged by this, but I think especially you guys on the left, because these crimes are not only being done, but they're being perpetrated along racial lines, which I guess somehow makes it worse, because it's, worse if massive numbers of children, I think like 20,000 the latest count, just children alone. I'm not going to say what has happened to them because, obviously guidelines, but I think we all know what's happened to these 20,000 children I'm talking about, right? Um, and apparently it's worse if that happens because of a racial ideology, which is the case right now, than if it was happening because I guess like economic reasons. I feel like the kids would probably not care either way, but whatever. Anyway, this should be a particular concern to the left, right? And the reason that this is allowed to happen, not only allowed to happen, but being carried out with American munitions, massive amounts of American tax dollars, is because most of our politicians, our power elite, other key fields, are compromised by videos of these people doing unspeakable things with children, and who knows what else? Maybe animals. I'm kind of thinking animals at this point. Who knows, right? And now, why am I telling you guys this? Why am I telling you this? Well, what does this have to do with Joey Swoll? Well, here's how. Here's what it has to do with him. So everything I just told you, I'm not telling you anything new, am I? You already knew all this, right? Practically everybody who's paying attention does. And the vast majority of us are outraged by it, whether you're left, right, normal, off the wall, whatever. Pretty much every part of the political spectrum, except a few that have been, bought off or psyoped, agrees that this is pure evil and needs to be stopped. So why hasn't it been? Well, there are a number of reasons that the system's able to maintain control despite general public outrage, but one of the biggest ones is the divide and conquer strategy. Getting people hating each other enough that they won't be able to work together effectively, even though they do all, hate the powers that be, they just can't get along, right? That is a classic, right? If you've studied history, you're going to know that this has been used on plenty of opposition movements before, Occupy Wall Street, Vietnam War protests, in many other cases. It's been a staple of the establishment playbook to just take opposition, making points that are valid and broadly appealing to a large swath of the population, and then associate them with a bunch of things that people find objectionable. A bunch of nicely dressed normal people protesting a war that's stupid and immoral. That is a threat to the system, right? A bunch of dirty hippies doing drugs, acting obnoxious, and spitting in the faces of returning soldiers. Perfect. Now we can work with that. Now, even if normal people really aren't sold on the war, they just like the drugs and degeneracy and bad behavior more, so they assume the hippies must be wrong about it, right? Problem solved. Or at least fixed a little bit, right? From the perspective of the system, obviously not me. And, there's probably no divide and conquer strategy that has worked better than race. Maybe the battle of the sexes, that's a big one too. Hard to say, but race is definitely up there, right? Not only do you get antagonism between different races, you also get the majority, who of course are the ones who are most important to control in a democracy, fighting amongst themselves. It's wonderful from the perspective of a hostile elite that's trying to get away with impoverishing everyone else. and getting away with, again, I'm not going to say, I guess we'll call it the G word. We'll call it the G word, right? Because I don't want to bring the eye of Sauron upon me, but we all know what I mean by the G word, which I hate to have to use like euphemisms like that. That it feels very another G word. Um, we have a lot of G word. Anyway, um, which brings us to the matter at hand, right? With all this stuff happening, true evil happening in the world, you guys have been conditioned so much by years of propaganda, and by you guys, I'm talking to leftists. You guys have been so conditioned by years of propaganda that's intended to sow division that you guys are more outraged that Joey Swoll likes a guy because that guy said a word probably 30 or 40 years ago. And maybe not all of you. Let me know if the shoe fits or not. But there are some of you who are more shocked, horrified, morally repulsed that a white man dropped an N bomb than you are that actual, real munitions are being dropped on children, hospitals, churches, civilians, right? Seriously, take a look inward, see if that's true or not. Maybe it's not true for everyone, but I know it's true for some because I've seen some social media accounts that are, bashing Joey that never said one thing about the actual real thing going on. The G word, right? They're concerned about in bombs, not G whatever. Not this is confusing. Why do we have to have language control? But anyway, right? Um, like be honest with yourself. If a prominent white person drops an in bomb, a lot of you would probably have a stronger reaction to that than stories about actual munitions used on civilians that we see in the news every day. I mean, if that's true, ask yourself, is that normal? Like, is it normal that I react more strongly to the utterance of a word than to the G word actually being carried out in real life? No, it's not normal, right? That's not how humans are going to naturally respond to things. So how did it get to be this way? Why are we reacting this way? Well, I would submit to you that we have been conditioned to be hypersensitive to racial conflict as a way to keep us fighting each other instead of fighting the powers that be, right? Now, there are certainly other explanations, but it's worth thinking about, isn't it? I mean, we see with the files that are not getting released that the powers that be are definitely going to great lengths to exert control, right? And now listen, I'm not advocating for racism. I'm not advocating for white folks dropping in bombs. In fact, I'm arguing the opposite here, that we should all get along, find common ground, and not try to antagonize each other, right? I'm just pointing out that the left has purity spiraled on race relations, specifically in America, maybe not other places where there are real conflict going on, but in America, to the point where it's just creating unnecessary division that frankly is very, very beneficial to the powers that be, right? The left is spending its time attacking people for liking someone who said a no-no word decades ago instead of attacking people who are actually doing the G word now. And also making themselves look like assholes to normal folks who are just sick of cancel culture. And that's a problem because you guys on the left, you're right about a lot of stuff. A lot of your critiques of capitalism, economic exploitation are on point right now. And frankly, more people on the right should be listening. Um, and those of you who actually have the guts to speak out on the G word, well, obviously you're in the right about that. And that's a situation, by the way, where there's a very real problem of racially motivated violence. But we're not supposed to talk about that one, right? But if you're pairing those real critiques that are valid, with going after someone for saying colored, and I hope I can still say that in quotation marks, I'm not saying it, I'm quoting Joey, right? Hopefully that's still okay in 2025. Anyway, this is going to get real confusing if I have to if I have to say C word in addition to the G word and the N word, and there already is a C word already, so, oh my God, maybe, like, yeah, I hope that sorts itself out. Anyway, um, you guys kind of come off as a crazy outrage mob going after people for really petty stuff, so it makes all your correct positions, and a lot of them are correct. It makes them seem less appealing by association, right? Now, I know some of you are thinking, but wait, if Joey's mind just instinctively went to colored, that's kind of a weird slip. Maybe he really is racist. So, first of all, I don't get the feeling that's the case. It seems like the sort of slip up that the kind of white conservative who's terrified of offending someone might make because he doesn't want to say the wrong thing and he's not comfortable just saying black people because he's not sure if he's allowed to. But he's also not up on the latest guidelines to know what to say, so he's like searching for something and that's what comes into his head. Uh, I kind of feel like an actual racist would we either say something more offensive or not. Like, I don't think they're behind closed doors, like, just constantly talking about colored people behind closed doors and it becomes a habit and then they accidentally, say it in public, right? That sounds to me more like somebody making a mistake because the possibility of offending people makes him nervous, but who knows? I don't know. Let's just all agree, just for the sake of argument, that there is a possibility that deep down, Joey actually does not like black people. Okay, what then? Is he doing anything about it? Has he advocated that black children should be deprived of food in the thousands? Is he advocating that munitions paid for by American tax dollars be dropped on black children? Is Joey on the Epstein list? No. He just said a word that makes us suspect that he might secretly be prejudiced. Then maybe we can chill out for a little bit because we have bigger fish to fry. Now, again, I'm not advocating for racism here. I'm not. But you ever hear the saying, don't make perfect the enemy of good? You guys are trying to do basically racial perfectionism here, and that's distracting from actual conflict along race lines, frankly, that's resulting in enormous loss and suffering. And also, it's distracting from our elites, making things worse for all of us, black, white, everything else. Like, race relations in America are not perfect, but they are definitely at a point where we can and should put all that conflict on the back burner while we address much, much bigger problems. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander, whatever else. I don't want to leave anyone out, but I also don't want to try to list every possible subgroup. Left wing, right wing, whatever. Can we all come together and agree that having our country run by a hostile cabal of people who are controlled by videos with kids and God knows what else is going on there, who are impoverishing all of us, making the country worse for children of all races, taking our tax money to pay for, I have to say it again, G word, overseas. Can we agree that that's a little bit bigger of a problem and just give each other a pass on all the little stuff for the time being? And I'm not asking for everyone to get a full on inward pass, but can we at least get some C word passes so we can focus on the things that matter? And before you say, oh no, you don't understand the history because of your white privilege, we can't let some of this stuff go. Okay, I mean, you can say that, but my response is, okay, so the ancestors of black Americans who were slaves, these ancestors would rather that we squabble amongst ourselves over words than take our country back, put an end to atrocities, and enrich the working and middle classes, including their very own descendants. They would rather that we just fight over words than actually take our country back and improve our position. I mean, maybe. I don't know, but to my privileged white mind, that sounds a lot more like what the modern equivalent of plantation owners today would want. But, who knows? I won't speak for anyone. So anyway, I propose that we table all conflict, racial, political, anything other than our country should not be run by shadowy networks who use secretive videotapes of our leaders with kids. Like that, let's make that the only issue for the time being and just do our best to come together with people from different ideologies, races, religions, genders, food preferences, and so forth until that's settled. So to that end, let's try not to antagonize each other, but let's also try to be tolerant and forgiving, right? We don't all have to like each other, but we do have to get along. I think Lord of the Rings is the perfect analogy here. Now, there was real conflict in the history of elves and dwarves. If you look into the Silmarillion and other sources, they actually had significant reasons to distrust each other, going up into that war. They had reason for grudges, right? But because they were up against something that was just unequivocally evil and a threat to everybody, they had to table all that and work together. And you know what? Some of them even ended up becoming friends.
I thought I'd die fighting side by side with an elf.
What about side by side with a friend?
I could do that.
So that's what we should be trying to emulate. Just table the small stuff, the negative history, and work together because we are most definitely up against unequivocal evil. I mean, hell, Sauron even had the decency not to try to control everyone using, Palantir footage of Gondorian leaders doing horrible things with hobbits, right? And he wasn't trying to wipe out a whole population or anything. He just wanted to be in charge and have everyone pay tribute. And honestly, I bet it would have been really simple tribute too, like, hey, you owe this much, pay up. It wouldn't be like you wouldn't have the orcs showing up to Rohan being like, we've come to collect tribute from Rohan. Okay, how much does Rohan owe? Well, the Rohirrim have to figure that out. Here's 1,000 pages of tribute code. Okay, so the Rohirrim get to tell you how much they owe? No, we know how much they owe. but you have to calculate it yourself, and if you get it wrong, we're going to throw you in the dungeons of Barad-dûr, right? Sauron wouldn't do any of that stuff. Sauron had standards. He was much more moral than the IRS, right? And I think it's good that fitness can be a little bit of a Rivendell or maybe a Bree in this analogy, where all sorts of people from different walks of life can come together and hopefully find some common ground. It's a way of combating the tendency that we have to form separate echo chambers divided by politics and other, dividing factors that social media amplifies. And we all tend to want to find other like-minded people. That's fine, but that ends up dividing and isolating us. So it's nice to have shared hobbies that bring us back into contact with different types of people. So that's what I want to try and foster. I feel obligated to say things like this with a platform I have. I mean, I can't just stay silent on this, but I'm also not trying to get too factional and pick sides and end up with yet another echo chamber, right? I want, different perspectives to be welcome here. So I try to stick to the really important parts that we all need to focus on, and I try not to pick sides otherwise, right? This is kind of an open letter, so to speak. It's aimed at leftists, but you can easily see how other factions could fall into the same traps, unnecessarily alienating and dividing, based on their own stuff, right? So don't do any of that, right? What's ironic is that I've ended up saying, let's make the gym an open and welcoming space to everyone in a video that's nominally about Joey Swole, but I don't mean like that you. Like, it's gross, right? Like I said, fuck that guy. I actually can't stand him. I can't stand people like him. And by the way, I don't think he ever used his platform to say anything about the G word that's going on, so fuck his moral pretenses. It's just bitch ass hall monitor behavior at that point. I mean, this Rachel's out here turning down sponsors who won't take a stand. Greta Thunberg, that little annoying Norwegian girl, I mean, she's out there risking her life to go over there because these people, what these people do to aid workers, right? But this roided out tough guy with all his morals had nothing to say. Fuck him, right? So you don't have to like him. I don't like him, but just don't do this stuff right now. Not the cancel stuff, right? It's counterproductive. If you want to do race relation perfectionism someday, try again later. Maybe see where we are like 5 to 10 years from now. If we fixed all our bigger problems, knock yourself out, whatever. We'll need something to keep us occupied. But until we defeat Sauron, quit trying to kick Gimli out of the party in the middle of battle for using elf slurs, okay? I'm not going to plug a sponsor in this video because it might be controversial. They probably would be okay with it, to be honest. Good people, sports, free speech, but I don't want to put them in that position. So instead, I'm going to plug a Instagram page for those of you who want to help out. I don't know how much this does help. It's subject to availability, but very inspiring guy. Follow him. Ultimately, what we can do is put pressure on our elites and just take our fucking country back so we can't be used as a shield for this stuff anymore. That's ultimately how we can help, right? And this was an attempt to try to like strategize about how we can do that. I mean, I think we're past the point where raising awareness is a thing because everybody's aware of it. The problem now is strategy. So I'm just putting my 2 cents out there to try to get us working together in a manner that's more effective. I think just getting rid of the divide and conquer is the most important thing. And then, figuring out what to do about people that have these compromising videos about them, right? I mean, maybe, again, to take a Lord of the Rings metaphor, maybe what we have to do is kind of realize that people who have come under the sway of the ring of power, so to speak, people who have been tempted, ultimately have a role to play in its destruction. And what I mean by that is, like, we ultimately it needed to be Gollum who destroyed the ring. And maybe we need to find some way to get some of these people who have videos on them to redeem themselves by spilling the beans on what's going on there and outing everybody. Maybe we need to find a way to kind of offer them amnesty. Like, hey, if you were, tempted by great evil and you did very evil things, but, if you come out and ultimately play a role in the destruction of the power system that you were a part of, maybe there could be a redemption arc for you. I don't know. That's just kind of my thought. Cause like, what else puts an end to this? We're all kind of aware of it. What else puts an end? Maybe that's a factor in the solution. I don't know. I mean, I find a lot of inspiration in Tolkien more so than, pretty much any philosophy or anything. And, perhaps in his treatment of Gollum, because Gollum's super important in the end and to this whole thing. Like I don't think it was an accident that he played such a central role in actually, destroying the ring. So maybe that's a solution somehow, offering a path. I mean, not that this is a fitness channel, it's a very small one, but I don't know. Just putting that idea out there that maybe we need to somehow try to see what we can do to offer a path to amnesty to somebody who has been, you know, controlled by such videos, but is willing to say, okay, look, this is what they got on me. Here's what they made me, turn on them. Maybe there's some redemption to a person like that, right? Maybe they like go to some island where they, there's no extradition treaties, and then like, go on an interview with Tucker Carlson or something and tell everything. Maybe I don't know. I don't know if that would help, but that's just kind of an idea I had. But yeah, I'm just trying to do what I can with the platform I have, right? So to end this video, I'll just briefly mention that I offer coaching. Me and the guys are trying to go in a more community-oriented direction with more group calls and stuff like that. So if you're interested, DM me on Instagram, email me or something. And that's that. I'm not going to do too much in this video. All right. Hope you guys found this useful, thought-provoking. I think it's important. So if you agree, please try to help it out with the algorithm, comment, share, things of that nature. All right. Thanks, guys.